It's time for another musical interlude. Let's get started. Talking with people with music in their genes, their blood, and in their soul. You are watching Musical Interlude. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Musical Interlude. I am your host, and today's guest is Ludlow Creek. Let's get the show started. Okay, so first question for me is, when did you first acknowledge your talent, your love, your gift for music?
Wow. So I'll go. Really early on, I know that I would say in probably early high school, loved music from day one. Always got into music. My dad always played classical music. I've got a couple of older brothers that would always play music at home. One loved the Beatles, one loved the Guess Who. And so I was always around music. And come about high school, there was this desire between myself and my friends to play music and not just listen to the radio. So I'd say in early high school is where I really discovered that, hey, this is something I'd like to do someday. So started dabbling with it that early. Jeff?
Uh, you know, Ringo Starr on the Ed Sullivan Show. That's all it took. As soon as I saw Ringo Starr, I was beating on every pot, pan, and book, anything I could, tabletop, and I essentially beat on a table so long that my parents couldn't stand it anymore, and they had to get me a drum set. So that's when it all started. As soon as I saw Ringo, I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do, and I have done it ever since.
For me, I've always loved music. Like Tom, we had music in the house all the time. I went through several phases where I would like different kinds of music, and for a lot of years, I listened to nothing but R&B. I remember at one point as a teenager, well, late teenager, my bedroom walls were plastered with Prince and Sheila E. and The Time and all those kind of artists. It wasn't until my late 20s that I actually started playing music, and it was really born from just being a young father, and we didn't have a lot of money after we bought diapers and formula, and so I obtained an old guitar, and that gave me some form of entertainment at home, and then my love for playing just took off, and it's been full steam ahead ever since.
To answer that question for me personally, I've been playing guitar and music for a long time. It's been just a big factor in my life. And I think early on, back in the 60s, just there was so much going on musically, the 60s and 70s, of course, with the Beatles and just all the great rock and popular music that was going on at the time. But I can remember vividly the one song that I heard as a child when I was probably about 8 years old that just really lit me up and inspired me to want to become a musician. And it was Classical Gas by Mason Williams. And it was just this amazing bit of virtuosity, guitar virtuosity, and with orchestra. And it changed my world.
Well, so when did you individually, when did you first come to the conclusion that this was not going to be a dream, that this would be reality for you to be in music?
I think for me personally, that's just been sort of this just gradual realization. You just go through these phases in your life, and you play, and then sometimes you put it down for a while, and then you pick it up and you play. And through intervention or karma, or whatever you want to call it, you come into contact with various other people who kind of have that same yearning to create and to play, and that's sort of how it's gone for me. It's not like I had some definite goal or destination. It's just been this process.
Yeah, I'd say, very similar for me as well. Early on, coming out of high school, going into college, we used to play, parties at the college, and we started playing some gigs around town in bars and whatnot. But then you get married, you have a family, life comes along, you make that decision that I'm gonna have to have a normal job, a steady job, and so really not until I met all these guys and we all finally came together, and really within only in the last few years when we started to write our own material and realized that, hey, this is something we can really do, that just recently we all decided that we're going to give this a shot. We're going to really try to be a band, not cover other people, but do our own stuff. So like Alan said, it's been with us all our lives, but the circumstances, being surrounded with these great folks, it all had to gel. And so I think we've all been very patient for many years. And so, here we are today. So for me, that's how it came about.
Well, for me, I really didn't have any other thing to do. I started to go to college, and that didn't fit. Didn't work for me. And I just wanted to play music. So when it was time to get a job, I think I drove a forklift for a few years until I could get into a studio. And I took a job in a studio, and I kind of did that for the next 20 years. That's the way I paid the bills, is I played music. I wasn't out playing live. I was working in a studio, but I was doing commercials and jingles and music for TV and music for anything I could do music for, just to pay the bills. And that's, I guess I just knew right from the get-go, this is how I got to do it, because I don't know how to do anything else. This is it.
Yeah, I'm still, Casey, I'm still trying to soak all this in. I've told these guys way back when I was taking some guitar lessons and knew absolutely nothing. And my guitar teacher used to tell me, when you start playing out with a band, you're going to need to do this, do that. And I used to tell him, you're crazy. I'll never play in front of anyone. That's not why I took up guitar. And my first band formed in 2007, and we started playing in front of people. And granted, it wasn't a good band, and I was in a couple of more bad bands over the years until good fortune brought me together with these guys. But in some respects, it's still just like a dream that I get to go out and do this.
So how did you all end up meeting and joining to create this band?
So it was an interesting ride. So I was telling you earlier that got married, had a family, had a regular job. I didn't want to stop playing music, but really couldn't go out and gig much anymore. And so we started having twice a year, we'd have what we called a rock fest. And it was just a good excuse to get musicians together and go ahead and learn tunes so that we could play in front of people. And it wasn't for money. It was just to keep our skills honed and to not lose it, because life would get in the way, and if you don't have a goal, then practices get canceled, et cetera, et cetera. So we did that for several years, and really that's how we all ended up meeting, was through these rock fests. Alan came over, was the first one that I met through a mutual friend, and then later Jeff came into the scene and had to replace my brother, who couldn't play one of the shows or one of the rock fests. And so we all got together with Jeff, and then it was a couple years after that, I think, is when I met Dave, found out he played music, and invited him over. And right then and there, I remember playing that evening, and I told my wife, and my wife's the other member of the band, she couldn't make it tonight, but I remember telling her, after they left, we need to get that guy in our band. He's really, there's something, really clicked. And, Dave, if you want to tell your end of that story, but so through those rock fests is how we really came together.
Yeah, it was weird because, we didn't find all this out until later, because it took several months before it all came together. But, I had, like I said, played with some bands. They weren't very good. for some reason or another, when a band ends, it rarely ever ends good. Even when everybody's friends, somebody finds a reason to make an issue out of it. And that had been my experience when I left bands. I had some family stuff going on, which is why I left my band prior to joining up with what would become Southbound at that time. But I wound up over at Tom's house and had such a great time. That night on the way off his property, my wife said to me, "You should get in a band with those guys." And I just laughed, and told her, "Oh, well, honey, if only it were that easy." And, we didn't know that Tom and his wife were having the same conversation that night. So, I had to pay some dues and do some chores for these guys and everything before they would actually entertain me in, but it all worked out.
So not only did you finally get together and you started playing live, when did you get to the point to where you said, not only we're going to write our own music, we're going to go to the studio and record an album? When did you get to that point? What was the reasoning why you said, we're going to, make an album?
So back in the Southbound days, and I think this is back in 2014 actually, because Southbound got together in 2013, people would bring some ideas or start playing around, squirreling around on the guitar or whatever, and we would chase those ideas. And I remember sitting around in the rehearsal space one night just talking about, do we want to try this? We want to try to do an album, So we went ahead and wrote some music and did that back in 2015. But we never really thought much more than, we'll just add some of these songs to our cover songs and just introduce the music, And after doing that for quite a few years, and some of our musician friends telling us that, man, when you guys play your original music and you fold it right into your show, you're playing great covers, your original music, the quality of the feel of the music doesn't go down at all, and you guys are just really, your music just fits really well, and the quality is just as good, et cetera, et cetera. So, it was one of those things where, well, maybe we can write some more tunes. And then, during that whole time period, Jeff really wanted to focus on some of his own original music, and we were just going a little bit different paces and some things that were going on with the band. So he started to pursue that. It was like 2.5 years that you were away from the band. We kept going as a cover band. Jeff rejoined us in August of 2019. Yeah. And that's when we, all decided. It was actually, as we were trudging along as a cover band, we weren't really progressing. And I know I still had, and I think everybody else did, that burning desire to play more original music, to write more, create more, et cetera, et cetera. So when Jeff came back, it was like full steam ahead.
The beauty is that there are a lot of writers in the band. So with everybody kind of can bring their own material into the band, which really gives us a boost on, material. And lately we've actually been, in the last year or so, starting to write together as a group, which is, we can't wait to get that stuff out there. Yeah. There's some of the best stuff we've ever done.
Well, you just answered my next question. I was going to ask if it was every song was written by one person or if you collectively wrote the songs. So you have your debut album. It's called Hands of Time. What does that? Why Hands of Time? What does that have to do with all the songs collectively?
Well, Dave, I'll let you answer that.
I was going to say, let Dave.
Okay. Hands of Time was actually a song I wrote over the course of about the last 5 months of my dad's life, watching him go through that transition to crossing over into the next life. And, for me, it was just, it was a form of therapy and thinking about how short our time is here and how quickly it goes by. And, it was, so that's where the song was born out of. And we didn't Um, I don't think I ever planned on even having anyone hear that song, but I told the band about it one night, and they wanted to hear it, and when they did, they suggested, why don't we record it? And of course, that kind of just led to the whole uh, album idea taking off, and everyone, all of us had written things throughout the years that we either didn't plan on doing anything with, or we didn't have musicians to record it with. And suddenly this opportunity was there, and we started doing it. And it just, it really hits a different place in your heart to be out playing in front of people, playing your own music. And you see their appreciation for it. It's a completely different kind of fulfillment versus playing cover songs. And we always tried to do our best playing covers, and we'd always have people telling us, you guys sound just like the Eagles, you sound just like Steely Dan. We know we were one of the better cover bands in town, and we loved doing it, but playing our own songs just brought a whole different kind of fulfillment.
Thank you for that.
Time was born, and these guys honored my dad by using that as a title track for the album.
Wow. So I have so many questions. They're basically around the same topic. So you joined together in 2013, and then it says your debut album comes out 2021. First of all, what was it like? Because you are musicians, you are artists, so you work in two places. You work in the studio, and you work at a concert hall / bar / theater. So of course, when March 2020 came around, your second place of work was closed. What did that do to you? How did you think? Did you take a break? Did you, and was the idea of the album before the pandemic, or did the pandemic give you the idea to make the album?
We actually were working on the album when that happened. We had started recording some tracks for that album, and when March of 2020 hit, we all thought, well, we're going to be out for a couple of weeks. We'll just, this is no big deal. And then a couple of weeks turned into 3, and then 4, and then we're looking around like, how are we going to make this happen? Because we're not even comfortable getting together anymore. I mean, I had an older parent living with us. Tom had an older parent living with him, and we certainly didn't want to, bring in anything that would harm them. So we were really stumped. We were really stumped. We looked at some of the online programs that you could get together, on
Virtually.
from virtually.
Yep.
and do music, and they just didn't work. They just couldn't do 5 people at one time in sync. So it was really hard. We for a period we sent tracks back and forth. I would send out a rough drum track or a drum and bass track, and the guys would put parts on top of it and send it back, put vocals back, send back vocals, and I'd put it together, but it really wasn't optimal because we just sing better when we're all standing next to each other, and we can work together as a group. So it was we really struggled from that aspect. So a lot of that got put on hold, during which time, I can speak for myself, and I think I could probably speak for everybody else. We spent a ton of time writing music. I mean, that whole time we were down, we were cranking out tunes left and right. Some of them were good, some of them were bad, but we were cranking them out. And all of that material is on the upcoming album. Most of that material is on the upcoming album. We have a number of tracks that are just kind of sitting there waiting to be picked for something. And we're now working on the third album. And since we've been writing together, the third album is kind of taking that stance of as a group writing. So so it's that was really tough on us, but we've become better writers for it.
Cool. So I would like to all of you to individually ask this question. I'm sure you have thousands. I only need one. You know, as you were saying earlier, you saw Ringo Starr and you knew that that's what you wanted to do. And most people immediately either go to class, take lessons, and they learn to play an instrument, and then they get in the business. And the one thing no one tells them is that there is a business side to music. And so name one thing you learned through your journey that shocked you about the business of music business.
Well, I guess I'll go first. So we're really, I think, still in the discovery stage, because we're moving from being this local cover band that played some small festivals to trying to get onto a bigger stage. And, you know, I think one of the things that shocked us so far is that, you know, we might have produced some music in our previous band, you know, under the name Southbound, but, you know, it didn't go anywhere. And so it is a business, just like you said. So we read a bunch of articles, you know, tried to find, you know, get some advice from people who've done it before. And the thing is, one of the articles that we read was, you know, hey, if you're a baker, all you want to do is, you know, you want to bake bread, you want to bake cakes. That's all you want to do. But guess what? If you don't have any customers to sell to, you can't really do any baking. And music's the same way. And so it doesn't matter how good you are, you've got to advertise yourself. You really got to market yourself. And we're learning that big time because, you know, we've only been doing this a short while. And because we've decided to, you know, invest in marketing ourselves, we're starting to get streams, we're starting to get views, we're starting to get airplay. And it really, you know, I hate to say this, but at some point, you know, all that you've heard about it, you know, it doesn't matter how good you are. Well, it matters. You got to have good content. You got to have good material. But that in and of itself, you could wait years and years and years and potentially never get discovered, or you can invest in your business and try to market yourself. And then hopefully we're starting to get really good reviews and whatnot. And I think that's going to really get us moving forward. Where before, when we just tried it on our own to try to grow it organically, it just didn't go that far. I mean, we had a local following, but if you want to get out there, you got to invest. And, you know, it's just a harsh reality of it's a business. So I think, you know, I think we all learned that, and we're all learning it right now, real time.
Absolutely. One of the things I guess that surprised me about the whole thing was, I guess when I was young, I thought, man, I can just play drums and I can make a living just playing drums. That doesn't happen. You have to go a little farther than just, you know, playing drums. You have to know somebody. And that's, I think that was probably the biggest lesson for me is you meet the right people in the right moment, things happen that you can't explain. And you can beat your head against the wall for days trying to, you know, years trying to get to that point, but it just takes one person. So I think that's the one thing that surprised me. I thought it was going to be, you know, fairly easy to do, not fairly easy to do at all. And with, you know, in today's market where and people are flooded with media. I mean, they're getting hit with media all day long, 24/7. It's hard to break through and you know, capture somebody's attention. So it's a tough road, but we're happy to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it kind of is to piggyback on Tom's point, and you don't realize how much you're underselling yourself, because playing locally, and establishing relationships with venues, they're essentially paying the same thing they were paying bands 20 years ago. And if you're on the musician side of it, in some respects, I always felt like you're obligated to cut those guys a break because they're giving you a place to play. And but I mean, in more recent years, I think I've kind of gone the opposite direction in that. And when we built ourselves up to being able to play larger venues, and without having that expertise to guide us along, when they'd ask us what our fee was, we'd always bid low, even though it was substantially more than we were making playing in bars. And they would just jump at the opportunity, like, you know, like a kangaroo, just, yes, okay, you're signed. So Lord only knows how much money we didn't make over the years because we didn't charge enough for what we were providing. What about you, Alan?
Well, I think for me, the one thing in this whole process, Casey, is, you know, it's things reveal themselves. And, you know, I guess the one thing that it's just, you have to step out on faith. You know, I think about, you know, the evolution of becoming a songwriter, for example. And I think we all have written songs, as Dave alluded to, and maybe we didn't think they were worth anything, or they're, you know, but bringing them to the rest of the members of the band and being able to collaborate and having that affirmation from, you know, people that I respect in the band, that's really kind of helped me confidence-wise, you know, to have faith in myself and my own abilities as a musician and a songwriter. And I think the same is true probably, you know, even in the music business. For us to go from, you know, the cover band that we were before to establish Ludlow Creek, you know, we struggled with that decision for a while. It wasn't an instantaneous thing. But eventually I think we all, you know, kind of came together and said, you know, we need to step out on faith. We need to believe in ourselves and believe in you know, what we have to offer, and believe that there's an avenue out there. And then that led to, you know, reaching out to some people that can help us, you know, kind of find our way and navigate this. And I think it's a continual process. We're still stepping out on faith, you know, time and time again. So that to me has been kind of, it's just been a bit of a revelation.
If I can add to that too, you know, as difficult as it was to make that decision, and we needed some guidance, and we had so many different meetings talking about over the last, I don't know, couple of years, to finally, you know, take that leap of faith. But we reached out to, we got a, you know, through Jeff's wife, got a really good recommendation on MTS Management, Michael Stover, and he's been a godsend. I mean, he, you talk about faith and things happen for a reason, meeting the right people. Not only did we all meet, and we told that story earlier, and that's what's allowed us to create at the level we're creating at now, but we believe our first foray into trying to make it on the bigger stage, God brought Michael to us. And, you know, being able to work with him and MTS Management's made just a huge difference for us. And I think we all believe we're very blessed to have met Michael.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Just this evening, we had a song played on a blues show out of the United Kingdom. And a little bit later this evening, one of our tunes is going to get played on Nashville radio.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think 2 years ago is when Mike first found me and started sending me his artists, and all of them have said the same thing about him. So he's obviously a great person.
Yeah.
So
to work with.
Good. So are there any upcoming events scheduled as far as performing?
Yeah, so we have a couple of events that are sort of transitionary from you know, the old cover band days. And so there's a couple of venues that we played at in the past, and we just asked them, hey, as we're making this transition, we'd like to play your event again. They reached out to us for 2022, and we said, we're not a cover band anymore. We'd like to play as an original band, and our name's now Ludlow Creek. And so there's a festival, local festival here in town in June that we're playing. And then there's a concert series, a summer concert series in the city just outside of Dayton, Ohio, that we're going to be playing at. So right now, those are the two shows that we've got lined up. And we're literally working right now on putting together our album release show, probably in the late June, early July timeframe. So those are the things that we have on the docket as we start to transition over.
Cool. So my last question for all of you, and you can take your time. Most people usually need to take time to think about this one. if you had the chance to speak to a musician that inspired you, whether they be dead or alive, well-known or unknown, whether they be a singer, musician, engineer, however they're in the music business, who would this individual be and why?
I got mine.
I guess I'll go first. So for me, it would be a group, and it would be the Beatles. I just remember, I mean, literally, 5 years old, hearing my brothers playing the Beatles and just sort of being awestruck by the music. And then, of course, I play bass, and Paul McCartney would be someone I would love, to talk to. But really, I'd love to talk to, John Lennon and Paul at the same time, to talk about those glory days when Lennon and McCartney were writing unbelievable music, and how, whether they realized it or not at the time, they were changing the entire world, not just musically. They were changing the entire culture. It's just two folks that met. We all know their story, how they all four came together. But love to be able to talk with those guys.
Yeah, for me, it would be George Martin. I would love to have sat down with George Martin and just picked his brain about how he does stuff.
Yeah.
The recordings that he did in, 60s, 70s still hold up today. I mean, and yeah, his son's remixing them, but that stuff still stands up. That's, that's saying something. When you can record a piece of music that stands today, 50 years later, yeah, that's what I'd like to do. That's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely did all of that. Big Beatles fan. But I think the one person I would really like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with and talk to would be Les Paul, because just the things that he did, the way he innovated multi-track recording, developing the Les Paul guitar, all the innovations that he brought to music and to recording artists, just amazing. And he was a phenomenal musician and guitar player. I read that he would play in a club in New York City every Monday night. He would go and play in this club, and he did that up until the Monday night before he passed away. And I think when he passed away, I'm sure he was probably in his late 80s. He was quite a man. So that's one guy I'd like to talk to.
Yeah, that's a great question, Casey. There's so many I could think of, but and I go through phases of who my favorite player is, now versus 2 weeks ago. But I think it probably for me would be Steve Lukather. Yeah, everybody knows him from Toto, but he wrote a #1 song for George Benson. He's on Michael Jackson's records. He played a solo on Olivia Newton-John's hit record. He's just done way more than be a guitar gunslinger, and he seems like such a comical personality that he's somebody that would be fun just to hang out with for a few hours and hear some of those stories. I read his book a while back, and it was, once you started reading it, you couldn't put it down. But I imagine there's plenty more stories that he wasn't able to get to.
And out in my window, fall puts on a colorful show. Now watch my children playing on stony lonesome road. Whippoorwills and sunshine, cottontails and grapevines, my mother and father smile on stony lonesome road. Stony lonesome road. Stony lonesome road. Stony lonesome road. Lined with old red dog and limestone walls. Stony lonesome road. And in my dreams I still hear you call. Well, I hear you call. When I'm coming home.
That is all the time we have for you today on Musical Interlude. I want to thank our guest, Ludlow Creek, for stopping on by, and of course you, the audience, for watching. Thank you. Have a great day.